Good evening, and welcome back to News Around, the channel where we refuse to skim the surface of celebrity lives. We are dedicated to diving into the deep, often turbulent waters where real life happens. Usually, when we talk about relationship crises in the entertainment world, we are discussing jealousy, infidelity, or the pressures of fame. But tonight, we are discussing something far more primal, far more visceral, and infinitely more consequential. We are talking about a war of words that took place behind closed doors, a confrontation that did not happen on a film set, but in a living room. It was supposed to be a quiet step toward reconciliation for one of our favorite couples, Cemre Arda and Gökberk Yıldırım. Instead, it became a battlefield. Unexpected news has shaken the foundations of their inner circle. It wasn't about a script or a contract. It was about a single word that changes everything: baby. What happens when the family you love turns against the future you are building? What happens when concern begins to sound suspiciously like control? And most importantly, what happens when a man stands up in a room full of doubt and utters a sentence so powerful that it silences everyone present? If you don't want this baby, I do. Those words, spoken by Gökberk Yıldırım, have redrawn the lines of loyalty. Tonight, we are reconstructing the most intense argument of the year. An argument that ended in a breakup with the family, but perhaps, the salvation of the couple. Before we step into that tension-filled room, I ask for your support. If you value journalism that explores the human condition with empathy and depth, please destroy that subscribe button. And for those who want to help us continue this investigative work, the join button is your way to stand with us. Your support is our foundation. Now, let's analyze the explosion. To understand the magnitude of this rupture, we must first set the stage. According to sources very close to the family, the meeting was arranged under the guise of diplomacy. The invitation was framed with phrases like talking calmly and clearing the air. The reconciliation between Seamra and Gawkberg had been progressing quietly, cautiously, like a flower growing through concrete. But this progress had generated a silent unease among those around them, specifically, Semra's family. They walked into that room expecting a dialogue. What they found was an ambush of anxieties. The atmosphere did not stay calm for long. It grew thick and tense as the family's carefully disguised phrases of concern began to peel away, revealing the raw doubts underneath. The topic wasn't just their relationship, it was the consequence of their relationship. It was the potential of a new life. A baby. Semra's family, driven by a protective instinct that had curdled into fear, reportedly laid their cards on the table. They spoke of the actress's current situation. They brought up her recent health issues, scars from the past that they used as evidence of her fragility. They questioned the timing. They questioned the stability. They painted a picture of a future where a child would be a burden, a risk, a mistake. To the outside world, this might sound like prudence. But to Gökberk Yıldırım, sitting there and watching the woman he loved shrink under the weight of this interrogation, it sounded like something else entirely. They weren't speaking from a place of care, they were speaking from a place of fear, revealed a source present at the discussion. And there is a crucial difference. Care empowers, fear paralyzes. The family was essentially telling Seamra that she was not ready, not strong enough, not capable. They were infantilizing her in the name of protecting her. The tension reached its absolute peak when the family's comments shifted from questioning the timing to subtly rejecting the pregnancy itself. It was a moment of suffocation. Seamra, overwhelmed, remained silent. And then, Gawkberg stood up. He didn't flip a table. He didn't scream. He didn't resort to insults. According to witnesses, he was terrifyingly calm. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of the people who were trying to dismantle his future, and he uttered the phrase that has now become legendary in their circle. If you don't want this baby, I do. And I'm going to take care of everything. Let those words sink in. It was a unilateral declaration of responsibility. In a room focused on can't, shouldn't, and won't, Gawkberg introduced the concept of will. It was not a threat, it was a promise. It was a statement that said, your approval is not required for this life to exist. Those present say that moment marked a definitive turning point. It was no longer a family squabble, it was a life stance. Gawkberg wasn't arguing out of injured pride or impulsiveness. He was defending a reality that he considered non-negotiable. This is a scenario that many couples face, though perhaps not as dramatically. Where is the line between family advice and family interference? When does protection become control? We want to hear your perspective. Have you ever had to stand up to your family for your partner? Pause the video and share your story in the comments. We read every single one. And please, if you are appreciating this deep dive into family dynamics, like this video. It helps us reach more people. If you want to support independent media, click join. Now, let's look at Seamra. Throughout this entire verbal storm, Cemre Arda spoke very little. In fact, her silence was so profound it was almost heavy. But do not mistake this for passivity. According to those who know her best, it was a silence of acute observation, a silence of emotional evaluation. She was listening to every word her family threw at her, words that confirmed her deepest fear, that they didn't trust her strength. But more importantly, she was looking at Gawkberg. In the past, perhaps he would have remained quiet. Perhaps he would have tried to appease them. But in the midst of this chaos, he did something no one else did. He took a firm stand for her, not over her. For the first time, Seamra felt that someone wasn't deciding for her, but choosing to be by her side no matter what, a close friend confides. In that room, Gawkberg stopped being just a boyfriend and became a partner. He became the wall between her and the world. The meeting did not end with hugs. It did not end with a compromise. After Gawkberg's ultimatum hung in the air. If you don't want this baby, I do. The oxygen left the room. There were no warm goodbyes. There were only tense glances and the shared, heavy feeling that something had broken, or perhaps, that something had been forged. Seamra stood up and left the house with Gawkberg. They walked out together, a united front, without saying another word to the family. That seemingly simple gesture of walking out the door was interpreted by many as a clear stance. It wasn't a stance against her bloodline, but a stance in favor of her own selfhood. That same night, according to people close to her, Seamra cried. But she didn't cry from fear. She didn't cry from the sting of the argument. She cried from relief. For the first time in years, she wasn't trying to hold up the sky by herself. For the first time, she wasn't the one carrying the emotional load for everyone else. Someone was finally carrying her. One of the most painful aspects for Seamra wasn't the argument about the baby itself, but what she sensed behind her family's words, the lack of trust. This is the invisible wound that has haunted her. I felt they still saw me as someone who needed protecting, not as a woman capable of making her own decisions, she reportedly confessed later. For her, the conflict transcended the pregnancy. It was about autonomy. It was about the right to make mistakes, the right to choose a difficult path, the right to live her life without a committee deciding what was for her own good. Her family saw a fragile girl, Gawkberg saw a capable woman. And that distinction made all the difference. We must also analyze the change in Gökberk Yıldırım. Those who have known him for years say this episode marked a definitive metamorphosis. For a long time, he was considered distant, overly cautious, even evasive in tense moments, a man who preferred to avoid conflict. This time was different. He didn't raise his voice, but he was inflexible. I'm not here to ask for permission. I'm here to take responsibility, he reportedly said before leaving. That phrase left Seamra's family facing an uncomfortable truth. They weren't arguing with an immature boy anymore. They were arguing with a man who was willing to bear the weight of the consequences. He redefined himself in their eyes, and more importantly, in Seamra's eyes. It is important to be fair to the family, even if their methods were flawed. From within the family circle, some privately acknowledged that the conflict wasn't born of malice or rejection. It was born of panic. They were terrified that Seamra would suffer again. They were terrified that her health would be compromised, that her career would derail, that an irreversible decision would ruin her life. It is the classic generational fear, when love is mistaken for control. They thought they were saving her from a mistake, they didn't realize they were preventing her from living. But the way those fears were weaponized was interpreted by Gawkberg rightly as a denial of Cemre's agency. While the family spoke of "it's not the right time," Gawkberg spoke of "making it the right time." This argument was not an isolated incident. It was a watershed moment. It was a point of no return. It brought to the forefront everything that had been avoided for years: the right to choose, the fear of failure, the weight of family expectation, and the supreme value of having a partner who stays when the room gets cold. Gökberk Yıldırım made it clear that his return to Cemre's life wasn't symbolic or superficial. It was a real stand, with real consequences. After the confrontation, the relationship between Gawkberg and Cemre's family is visibly strained. There is distance, a necessary, cooling distance. Meanwhile, Seamra has made a clear decision to prioritize her emotional well-being and her own voice. And for the first time in a long time, she did so without asking permission. What happens now? For the moment, Cemre Arda is maintaining a public silence that speaks louder than any press release. She seems more reserved, yes, but also more determined. The family tensions are unresolved, and the future is uncertain. But there is one certainty that can no longer be undone: Seamra is not alone. When Gawkberg said, "If you don't want this baby, I do," he wasn't just defending a potential life, he was defending her life. He was defending their us. This story is far from over, but the chapter of hesitation is closed. Thank you for joining us for this intense analysis on News Around. We will continue to follow this developing story with the sensitivity it deserves. If you found this report insightful, please subscribe and turn on notifications. And to our Join members, thank you for supporting deep, meaningful journalism. Until next time, remember, sometimes you have to break the peace to find the truth. Goodbye.